And hi, Emma. Great to have you with us today. Okay. So, welcome everyone to today's Policy Engagement Information session. My name is Ana Sofia Ibon. I'm an associate with Innoweave, and I'm really happy to be with you all today and to be sharing some of the work that we've been doing on this stream and to see how it might align with your own work. Thanks again for joining in this incredibly busy time. And today we'll be going through the following roadmap. So first, I'll introduce at a high level some of Innoweave's approach and our impact-oriented approach. Then we'll go through a overview of the stream. I realize I have to stop my video. Okay. Then I'll go through an overview of the stream, then speak to some factors that can help you assess your readiness for coaching in this stream if you're interested in pursuing that, and then share some of what the user journey through the stream can look like, and then we'll have some time for Q&A at the end. For those of you who might not be familiar with the McConnell Foundation, McConnell is a private family foundation that works to advance a more inclusive, sustainable, resilient, and innovative country. We have a strong focus on social innovation and social finance, and we're committed to reconciliation between Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples. That's a core part of our work. And in our long history, so since 1937, we've worked to support nonprofits across Canada. And that history has helped us build an understanding of a number of shifts that are facing the sector and to identify opportunities to support organizations in the social sector. And that's where Innoweave is born. Innoweave is an initiative of the foundation which helps nonprofits and collaboratives and other organizations to develop their capacity to grow and to innovate. Hello, I see many people writing in the chat. Welcome, thank you for joining today. So Innoweave helps organizations and collaboratives innovate and respond to the scale and complexity of the challenges that the sector is facing today. And we do so by supporting organizations and clarifying their impact, their intended impact, their theory of change. We share information and support the organizations in learning about assessing and implementing social innovation approaches. And the objective of this is to support the sector in generating greater impact more quickly and at less cost. And how do we do this? So Innoweave is organized into 10 different streams, and each focuses on a different approach to social innovation. The initiative has been around for about 10 years now, and one of the most important learnings in that time has been about the importance of clarifying impact or intended impact ahead of jumping into other tools of approaches. That's why we have two foundational streams, the ones that you see at the top of the screen here, impact and strategic clarity and collective impact, which serve this purpose. The first one supports organizations in gaining clarity on the impact desired at an organizational level or in a major program area. And this stream guides organizations like yourselves through a structured process to align strategy with goals and activities. And in parallel, the collective impact stream has a similar purpose, but it is for organizations who are working as part of a collaborative with multiple stakeholders looking to achieve a population level impact. But this stream also helps collaborators identify an intended impact and theory of change. Right. So you might have gone through a similar process, and you might already have a clear sense of your group's intended impact and of the activities that can lead you to achieving that. And in that case, you might be interested in exploring other tools and approaches like policy engagement, which is the stream we will focus on today. And I do want to acknowledge that Sean Moore is on the call. Sean is a coach in the stream, and he was a key person in the creation of this stream and helped us develop the first iteration of constructive engagement, which was the original title of the stream. So thank you, Sean, for joining and for everything you've contributed to this work so far. So how does Innoweave's support look in practice? We work in a variety of ways. first, the innoweave team supports organizations through a wayfinding stage in which we help organizations and collaboratives to explore the different streams, to understand the tools available, and to see which ones might align with your impact goals. Then, for organizations who are interested in pursuing one of these approaches, we can offer some support in getting ready to work with a coach or expert. So we like to say that we are not the experts, but we can start help you start thinking about how some of these tools might look like in practice and how they can fit your goals as an organization. And then following this, innoweave offers grants for organizations who are looking to engage a coach in order to deepen their understanding of the tool or the approach that they've selected, and that way develop their internal capacity to put these tools in practice. And in parallel to this, we also contribute to coaches, communities of practice, and knowledge sharing, and try to support field building in these different approaches. And a little bit more of information about the coaching model. So innoweave supports a coaching model rather than a consultant model. And a key difference in this is that while organizations work very closely with coaches who offer extensive facilitations, it is organizations or collaboratives that execute the work rather than coaches doing the work for the organization. And coaches offer customized tools and advice throughout this process, but ultimately it is the organization who crafts their own plan and does it in a way that works for them and suits their needs, and they share a common experience with other organizations who are accessing coaching support through a stream. And here I do want to highlight that innoweave has a database on our website of coaches that are self-identified, that have worked with us in the past, or that are joining the initiative, but you have the option of working with any coach that you feel is a good fit for your purposes, even if they're not listed on the website, and we will assess that fit during the application process, and we can discuss that in the lead up to the application if you're interested in engaging a coach or two coaches. So that's some detail about innoweave's approach, and now I'll jump right into an overview of the stream, the policy engagement stream today, and help us all get on the same page about what innoweave is offering through this stream. So I first want to acknowledge that there are many interpretations of what policy engagement can consist of, and for the purposes of this stream, we define it as being a process that helps organizations understand, communicate, and work with policy makers, practitioners, organizations, businesses, or other segments of the public to promote changes to policies that can help them advance their impact or the impact that their community seeks. So here, we're really emphasizing the process of mobilizing decision makers and stakeholders in order to influence policy processes and policy decisions. And in fact, I do want to share that the French translation of the title of this stream is Mobilisation des décideurs. So it's really that emphasis in the mobilisation and mobilization of stakeholders piece that we find is key in how we understand this stream. And why do we work in this stream? Why do we think it's important, and why does policy engagement matter? Well, as you know, we're all currently living and working and creating change in systems that are shaped by policies and the structures that shape these policies. So these policies delineate a lot of what's possible within the systems that we inhabit and work in. And engaging in a process to transform these is a way to affect long-term change at a systems level. So put simply, improving policies but can positively transform the playground that we're all playing in. And it means that for an organization working to advance change, it opens up the opportunity to have an impact on an entire population and not necessarily only on the immediate users of your programs or partners of your programs. So for innoweave, policy engagement is also a way to broaden the understanding around an issue and its systemic roots. And by understanding the decision-making and policies that affect that issue, then there is an opportunity to identify pathways that can be beneficial for multiple stakeholders involved. So it is really about much more than just phoning politicians or knocking on decision makers' doors or getting a meeting. And lastly, it is a great way as well to bring a wider range of voices to the decision-making table. And on the other hand, what is this stream? What does this stream not include, or what is not encompassed within innoweave's policy engagement? So this stream is likely not the right approach if you're looking for a tool to help you develop an organizational impact plan. That is because a policy engagement project needs to be embedded within a larger strategy and be part of your larger mission rather than be an impact plan in and of itself. And I'll speak to this a bit more in a moment. Second, this is not the right fit if you're looking to include partisan activities or campaigning within your policy engagement work. That can absolutely be a great pathway to impact. However, we cannot support partisan activities as part of this work. Third, if you would like to raise general public awareness of an issue, this might also land a little bit outside of the scope of this stream, as we really focus on targeted approaches to engaging stakeholders rather than more general awareness raising. And fourth, as you all know, government relations services can be an avenue to engage in this type of work. However, we at innoweave try to support organizations in building their capability to advancing policy engagement. So a coach will offer guidance, but would not conduct the work for the organization. And lastly, if you're looking to speak with governments to access better funding for your work or issue, and if that's your main the main outcome that you want to achieve, then this might also not be the most appropriate fit. And if you have any questions about this, or if you're unclear about what it means for your organization, please don't hesitate to reach out or even write a question in the chat box, and we can discuss that later on in the session. So with this being said, who can you engage? And this stream really supports organizations that are looking to engage decision makers across sectors, across levels of government, and across focus areas. So here you have an overview of who this can include. So you see that it might be government at different levels, including territorial, federal, provincial, municipal. It might be professional associations or organizations that land within more the corporate or private sector. It might be an organization within civil society. It might be a parapublic institution like a hospital or a school board. So who you need to work with will, of course, depend on your organization's intended impact and mission. And you might even want to work with multiple audiences as part of your plan. So this is really, you will know best, of course, and in a policy engagement process, we'll be able to explore this further with a coach. So what this can look like in practice is it can take a variety of forms, right? And it can take place in multiple directions. So for example, there are fictional theoretical examples, but this could look like a nonprofit coalition that's engaging the federal government around regulations of toxics, or maybe a community organization who's looking to engage an industry association around climate risk disclosure practices. Or perhaps it's a flipped model where it's a municipal government that's looking to engage community stakeholders in order to devise or implement an equity, inclusion, and action plan. So this is just to give you an idea of the breadth of the types of engagement that can exist within this stream. Now I'll land this into two real cases to help illustrate this. The first one is a project that took place 5 years ago now. And Sean Moore, who I acknowledged earlier on in the call, was the coach for this project. And So Sean, if you have anything to add to this, please do add any comments in the chat. So the background for this project was this was led by the Coalition for Change to the Disability Gifts and Assets Limits. And the mission of this coalition was to ensure long-term income security for people with disabilities in the province of Ontario. And as part of achieving this intended impact, they identified that there was a key challenge in the strict gift and assets limits in the Ontario Disability Support Program, which ended up locking many individuals with disabilities into incomes below the poverty line. So what they did through a long process of engagement was to engage different provincial stakeholders in order to promote amendments to the ODSP that would ensure that long-term income security. So through this process, they mapped different stakeholders, identified relevant communities, spoke with organizations that were involved in anti-poverty and disability rights in the mental health space, and they identified and worked with people inside government as well. And so they, throughout this process, gained the support of elected officials and spoke to different public service leaders. And ultimately, this multi-partner engagement led to regulatory amendments to the ODSP, to the Ontario Disability Support Program, which raised the asset limits from $5,000 to $40,000, and the previous $6,000 gift limit to $10,000 per year. This is one example of an engagement that's taken place through this stream, just to give you an idea. If you're interested in learning more about this case, here at the bottom right of the slide, you can access a case study and see more details about this. Now I'll move on to a second example, which is case study that is, well, it's a case that's ongoing. And this is the case of Parkinson Quebec, which is a charity that serves as reference for the Parkinson community in the province and the healthcare professionals in the province. And the organization had identified the continued use of Parkinson-causing pesticides as a threat to public safety. And we're already engaging in different advocacy activities. And the focus of this project is really to protect future generations from Parkinson's disease caused by pesticide-related Parkinson's disease, by advocating for the ban of Parkinson-causing pesticides, along with other recommended actions. I'm seeing a comment and a question in the chat from Sherian. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And so Innoweave supported the Coalition for Change by offering a grant to engage Sean Moore as a coach to work with them to achieve their mission in their policy engagement project. And thank you, Josh, for sharing that link. So you can find out more at that link for the previous case study. And going back to Parkinson Quebec here, which is an ongoing case, the organization, along with Sean Moore, who's their coach as well, has, as part of this process, mapped and identified different key provincial actors and different leverage points within government to affect change. And that's been one of the learnings so far. This is ongoing work. And another learning has been the importance of finding strength in numbers. So they found allies in organizations concerned with the impacts of exposure to toxic chemicals and created a coalition that extends beyond the work of Parkinson Quebec. This is ongoing, but again, just to give you an example of what work within this stream can look like. And again, I encourage you to ask any questions in the chat that might be arising. And I'll move on now to some considerations to keep in mind when considering this stream. And first, of course, policy engagement, or the reason for these considerations rather, is that policy engagement doesn't operate in a vacuum, right? And there are different external factors to keep in mind. And I'll outline some of these in this slide and the next one. The first of these being A question that is often asked is there, as a charity, is there a limit to the advocacy or policy engagement work that I can engage in? And this is important because it's actually been a couple of years now, since 2019, that the Canada Revenue Agency removed the limits on the amount of public policy advocacy that is allowed at Canadian charities. So as a result of this, charities can devote up to 100% of their resources to public policy dialogue that further their charitable purpose. So this is an important change in the context to the work related to this stream. Another one that I want to emphasize is the context specificity. So we acknowledge that there's such a wide range of jurisdictions, levels of government, governing systems, and different governance models that exist in Canada. And we are agnostic to it. And yeah, Sylvia, I agree that was a fantastic and welcome change. But going back to the context specificity, the stream is agnostic to this. So it depends on your own goals, who you think you need to engage to advance your impact. We don't differentiate between these different levels of governments, and this stream can support organizations conducting work across this whole variety. And then onto another consideration is a note that I want to raise now on power dynamics as they relate to policy engagement. And here I want to say that among many things, of course, and as the examples illustrated, policy engagement is an exercise in relationship building, right? And in understanding other stakeholders' views in order to find ways forward. However, there are power dynamics and power disbalances that can't be decoupled from policy discussions and policy making spaces. And this might affect organizations coming in to advocate for change or to advance policy engagement in different ways. So this is something that we want to be mindful of and acknowledge that different groups or communities might have had different experiences with the policy making spaces. And some communities have traditionally had reduced access to these spaces, or no access at all, or have felt unwelcome in these. So this is hard work, and there's a lot of pushbacks and no's, and the experience of each group will depend on their past experience as well. And to this, I would personally add, like, this work should not come at the expense of your well-being or your staff's well-being. And we do want to acknowledge that different power dynamics will affect groups differently based on past history. And then last, another point within this is the importance of lived experience and the role that plays in these discussions. So as I mentioned earlier, policy engagement can be a fantastic opportunity to bring different voices around the table. And this might touch on sensitive topics, and it's important to think of this early on and to approach this is in an ethical and sensitive way. So I'll move on to the next here. And then just to wrap up on the considerations, I want to make another note on timing. So this type of work takes time and can take years because policy engagement is not linear. Some policy discussions are scheduled in advance, right? So consultations, for example, would be a great example of this. But there are also windows of opportunity that are unpredictable. And we've witnessed that in the last year with COVID-19 and different policy announcements over the last year. And the point of me raising this is that this stream does not pretend to help organizations achieve large-scale policy change in 4 to 6 months with $10,000 of coaching support. We do offer coaching support for up to $10,000, but the point of this is that Innoweave wants to support organizations to develop their organizational capability and define their plans to grow their impact in order to advance those policy engagement processes. And that will look differently depending on where you are at in your policy engagement work. And as an exercise to explore this question of where you're at on your own journey in the policy engagement space. Because of course everyone on this call will be at a different stage, I'm assuming. I've identified here 4 broad stages along the policy engagement journey to help you situate where you might be at this moment. And these are not all encompassing and they're not used to assess applications. This is more of an exercise for the purpose of today to help you think about your own position with regards to this stream and consider whether support could be useful or not. So I'll take you through these 4 quickly, and then we'll do a little poll. So the first one here, sensing. So this is at an earlier stage. So if you're at the sensing stage, maybe you haven't yet identified a clear alignment between policy engagement and the goals you want to achieve as an organization. So in that case, different supports might be useful, and maybe you'll want to clarify that alignment first before jumping into tactics or into a strategy for policy engagement. And here, one thing you might be find useful is actually going a bit earlier on to an impact and strategic clarity support through the coaching stream that I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, which is one of innoweave's core supports. But maybe you're a bit further along and you've identified, you're clarifying whether this stream is the right stream for you, and you've identified an alignment between your goals and policy engagement. Or maybe you're still clarifying who to mobilize or how to mobilize them. And in that case, coaching through this stream could help you identify a plan for how to best leverage policy to achieve your impact. Maybe you're a little bit further along and you're at an experimental stage where you're trying out different policy engagement approaches. So for example, this could look like having already launched an engagement effort, but not being sure whether it's the best approach or not. And in that case, accessing the support of a coach and working with them could help you field test different strategies, gauge how useful they are, and see if they're really the best tool to achieving your impact. And then on the end of this, at the end right of this table, is the trailblazing stage. So maybe your policy engagement is actually one of the main tools in your impact making toolbox, and you're advancing or have advanced a few different projects in this space already. For example, you might be chairing a coalition that has shared policy engagement goals and have already advanced work in there. So in that case, and taking into account that policy engagement doesn't operate in a vacuum, maybe you could expect coaching to help you adapt and focus your strategies as the context continues to change. So I encourage you to think about where you are situated, and I'll put up a poll now. You should see it on your screen. So if we could take the next 20 seconds or so, and if you have a sense of where you land on this table, then we'd love to know. And we're using this as an exercise for the purpose of this session, as I mentioned. And ultimately, I want to highlight, well, people complete the poll, that this stream is quite flexible. So at this early stage of the process, this is just an info session. We want to help you align your impact with potential tools that might be helpful to advance your work. I see people filling out the poll. I'll give folks maybe 10 more seconds. And if you're not sure, that's completely okay. Again, this is just an exercise more than a rigid criteria. So, okay. I'll end the poll now and share the results. So as you can see, most people on the call today are at land between the clarifying and exploring stage. Yeah, so more so in the clarifying space. I hope you can see my results. The results on the screen, you should be able to see this. And we'll share this in a follow-up email as well. So thank you for joining in on that exercise. with this, I'll now jump into some of the criteria that you can use to assess your readiness for engaging in a project in this stream. So some of the readiness factors that we consider in this stream. So and there are 5 factors that you should consider. I'll take you through each of these individual. And if you visit the website, you can access a self-assessment on the policy engagement website that where you can fill in some questions in order to identify where your organization is located. So I'll start with the impact focus, which is arguably the most important piece. So here for this consideration, we are looking at how policy engagement aligns with your core impact and with your purpose as an organization. So it's key to have a clear sense of your objectives in the policy engagement space and how you fit your larger strategy. So here's a question for you to consider. So, is addressing a clearly identified policy issue, practice, or challenge a part of your organization's strategic plan or theory of change? This means that part of your plans require you to create change by engaging stakeholders, or part of your plans would be significantly advanced by engaging stakeholders. And if you're at the sensing stage, so thinking back to the last slide, and you want more support in aligning your strategy, your activities, and the impact you want to achieve, then maybe revisiting that more at an impact and strategic clarity coaching might be helpful in this case. And the reason for my emphasis on the impact is that policy engagement can be a tool for generating greater impact, but your intended impact as an organization should not depend on policy engagement. So this is one approach that can help you move closer to your desired goals, but it needs to be in combination with other programs and activities. So if you see the graphic on this slide, it is a how rather than an outcome. Policy engagement isn't an outcome because it's very possible that by deepening and broadening your understanding of an issue, that your goals in the policy engagement space might change, and you'll have new information, new relationships that might shift your process. So the outcome of a policy engagement process can't be set in stone before the process has begun. I'm seeing a question about the deck. Yes, we'll share the deck and the recording with everyone following the call. Thank you for the question. So I'll show you what this looks like for an organization. So you'll see here, this is the strategic plan for Youth Without Shelter, which is an organization based in Ontario that works to empower youth that are facing homelessness in order to support them in reaching their potential. And here you see, and apologies, the font is a bit small, but you see that they have their intended impact here at the top that is measurable and set within a specific timeline. So they're aiming between 2019 and 2024, 500 youth impacted by Youth Without Shelter will exit out of homelessness into stable living. So that's the impact they want to achieve as an organization. And underneath this, you see these 3 activity areas. And at the right, there's an activity area focused on education, awareness, and advocacy. And they've outlined here that one of the activities they're planning on doing is advocating on issues and policies that impact youth homelessness. And they're doing that independently or through the appropriate coalitions. So here you see how policy engagement is a how rather than an outcome. And then another example here is Sierra Club BC with a very different mission area focused on a healthy and life-sustaining planet where humans respect the dignity and interdependence of living beings. And here at the right, under this beautiful illustration of a tree, you see their 2 goals, and then under their goals, the strategies that they're planning on using. And you see advocacy here as one of the strategies. So again, a how rather than a what. Next up is the audience. So when you think of engaging in a coaching accompaniment through this stream, do you know which stakeholders you need to engage in order to advance changes to policies or practices that would help you create your desired organizational outcome? And here, you also will be one to ask yourself, are the stakeholders you've identified aware of this issue? Have they shown openness to tackling it? Have they acted on this already? You might only have a general sense of this right now, and that's okay. But as you gain clarity on your goals and on what policy engagement could do for your organization, mapping this will be important. And this is important for innoweave when we consider projects in this stream, because we want to support you in advancing projects that will lead to action being taken and to impacts being advanced, rather than just general awareness raising, which is important, but lands again outside of the scope of this stream. Next, we have awareness of stakeholder views. So this builds on the previous one, but here we're referring to a wider range of stakeholders that are impacted by your issue. So the question here is, do you have an understanding of how relevant stakeholders view your issue? And this is important because it's important to understand how your issue is perceived, as that will have an impact on any engagement process that you move forward. And here you'll want to draw on your organization's experience and your learnings, and you might want to complement this with some desk research or even going out and talking to people, testing the waters. But that awareness of stakeholder views is an important factor as well. Next, there's ecosystem understanding. So as you'll see, these build on each other. So here, of course, it's very likely that others are working to advance similar policy engagement goals or goals in the space that you're operating with. So for this factor, does your organization have a clear idea of which other actors are working to advance similar policy engagement goals? And it's, as the examples illustrated, it's often in the successes in policy and advocacy are often collaborative in nature, so through coalitions or through partnerships. And it's important to understand what other efforts exist in order to position your project well, and in order to understand who your potential collaborators might be, and also to avoid duplication of efforts, because this is hard work. It requires a lot of resources. So the more we can join efforts, the better, generally. And then I wanted to highlight again here innoweave's collective impact stream. If you're working already as part of a collective, and if you're a bit earlier on in the process of defining what your strategy might be, then that's this might be interesting for you to review the page of the stream and see if that might be a better fit. And lastly, we look across all of our streams at organizational capacity. So what is your organization's capacity to secure the human and financial resources needed to advance efforts to influence actions of decision makers, policy practitioners, and others? We really want to support groups in becoming outcomes capable, and this requires a significant commitment on the organization's part, as this is significant work, and a coaching engagement requires time and resources. And the intention of this is really to support organizations in becoming capable to continue the work after, or strengthening that capability. And I know this is a lot of information, and we're always here to discuss this further. So after this presentation, please do reach out if you have questions about how this applies to your specific projects. If you want additional clarification, we're always here to help you think about the types of support that might fit your purposes. And if you are thinking about submitting an expression of interest, this is highly encouraged, and you won't be asked to indicate which coach you would want to work with at this stage, but it's important to think about it from the start, as you might need a combination of skills for your project. And as I mentioned earlier, you have the option of engaging more than one coach. So this depends on your project, your goals, and where you're at the moment. And also with the caveat that we often don't know what we need right from the start, and that can change throughout the application process. But it's good to start thinking about it soon. And I'll speak to how the engagement, the expression of interest process takes place in my next section. The expression of interest is available on our site. I'll speak to that in a second. So that is it for the overview of the stream and the readiness factors to engage in processes on the stream. And I'll now jump into what a user journey looks like if you do decide to apply the support through this stream. So here you have a breakdown of the user journey for this stream. This is actually shared across most of our streams, and I'll give you a quick overview, especially of the first few steps. So first is the engage and inform stage, and you're all doing it right now by attending this information session. We also have additional info on our website for all of the streams, and we have an extensive resource list for policy engagement, specifically with resources to help think about how this lands in your work, and some DIY resources as well that partners and others in the sector offer. Then, as I said, we encourage that you connect with us if you're interested in learning more and in assessing if this fits your needs. And then if you do think that this is the right path for you, then we ask organizations to register on our online portal. Here's the link, and it's through this portal that the applications take place. And then subsequently, if you do engage in a project, then we'll use that as our main communications platform. And after registering comes the expression of interest stage. So groups are asked to submit an expression of interest through our granting portal. And the reason for expression of interest is that innoweave applications work in a two-layered process. The first one is a shorter submission. Thanks to us for the link in the chat. And in the first submission, you'll have questions about your eligibility, questions about readiness, so mirroring the different readiness factors that I went over in the last section of this presentation. And then we'll ask some details about your organizations and some level of detail about the project that you would like to engage in. Again, we encourage you to reach out to us if this is something you'd like to pursue, just to support you in that preparation of the EOI. The next deadline for expressions of interest is on April 15th. After this, once you've submitted an expression of interest, the groups that are approved to the next stage are invited to submit the second part of the application, which we call the request for support. And this is a more extensive application that includes more detail about the project, about the challenges you're approaching and facing in your work. And at this point, we will ask you to indicate which coach you'd like to work with. So before submitting your application, we require that groups connect with the coaches you'd like to work with in order to assess the fit, to co-create a statement of work, to confirm if they're available, to speak about the cost of the engagement and confirm their availability, of course. And support in this stream goes up to $10,000, and that goes entirely to the coaching engagement. And we'll also ask you a few details about how you plan to learn throughout this process, and I'll speak to that in my next few slides. The next deadline for this stage, for the request for support stage, is on June 1st. And of course, if you submit an EOI, then we will communicate with you to invite you to the next stage. I see a question from Cheryl in the chat. To clarify, the total amount of $10,000 must go to the coach. So the support through the stream goes entirely to the coach. So it is, yeah, it flows from innoweave to the coach. Okay, and then after the request for support stage, if the project is approved, then the coaching begins and you execute. Did I skipped a slide? We actually will have a kickoff meeting with the members of your organization that will take part in the project with the coach that you'll be working with, and then with some innoweave staff. And the purpose of this is to clarify the coaching process ahead, to review the statement of work, and to review how you'll be learning from this process. And you have more details here on the slide. I won't go into this too detailedly. And then after this call, then the work starts, right? So you begin the coaching engagement, you execute the project, the deliverables that you set out to complete. I'm just looking at some of the questions coming in. So Janine, to your question, how are coaches determined? We have a database of coaches on the website, but you're welcome to suggest a coach that you would like to work with, so they don't have to be registered with us. And then Sharon, to your question, I see Josh is answering some of the questions in the chat, so I'll just finish through these slides and then open up the floor for Q&A. After the implementation stage comes the wrap up. So after the project is completed, we do ask for organizations to submit a coaching, post-coaching learning summary. And this is where the rest of the funds are distributed to the coach. And at the end, we have, similar to the kickoff, we have a wrap-up call in order to surface learnings and to ensure that any next steps are covered. And again, it's the project leads, the coaches, and innoweave lead that participate in this. And I want to speak to the learning approach now. So we at innoweave really intend for groups. We want to shift away from evaluation that serves the funders' needs or the funders' perceived needs, to evaluation and learning that can support your project and your needs. So we think that evaluation should primarily benefit the organizations and their communities and their beneficiaries. So we highly encourage that groups share how they will reflect on their work throughout the process, and we're completely open to pivots throughout the process. We understand that things change. In fact, it'd be strange if projects didn't change at least slightly along the way. And we want to honor this reality and support the organizations in having access to learning tools throughout the process. So if your application is successful, then we can explore additional coaching supports to help your organization engage in some learning as well. And so we're nearing the end of the presentation. I wanted to leave with you the dates for the upcoming expression of interest on April 15th and the request for support stage on June 1st. And then the other two dates are the subsequent rounds. And we keep the same dates from year to year. And these dates are consistent across our streams. And lastly, before we open the floor for Q&A, I didn't want to highlight that or leave you with this, which is innoweave is only one resource to help you build your organizational capacity or capability to engage in policy solution, policy discussions, and to advance policy engagement. And there are many other resources out there, and training and funding opportunities. So we've compiled some of these on our website. You'll see here the first three are training programs offered by Matri and by the Max Bell Foundation and by Mass LBP. The first two are happen every year. I think they're at capacity for 2021, but you can get more information at those links. And then the third is, of course, that's upcoming that you might find interesting. And then in the second, in the purple box, there's a fund here that was recently announced. It's the Public Voice Fund, and this is directed at environmental nonprofits who are looking for support to conduct government relations work. So you might be interested in that. And then there are many other resources, and we have those available on our website. You're welcome to check that out and to test some of these tools and see how they fit your goals. So thank you for being here with us today. That is it for the formal piece of the content for the information session for the policy engagement stream. And I'll now turn my camera on and open the floor for questions. I see there's a lot of activity in the chat. And again, if you have any questions after this, you're always welcome to reach out to us. And here's my email. I'd be happy to hear your feedback, your questions, and your thoughts. So thank you again. And I see for those who have to drop off, I wish you a great rest of your day. Thank you. Okay. Thank you to everyone commenting. Adam, to your question, could this fund support policy engagement with the national government other than Canada? So innoweave supports only work conducted in Canada. So that would not be within the scope of our support, unfortunately. Thank you, Charla and Andrea. Thanks, Sarah and Emma. I see people here. If you have a question, do unmute yourself if you'd prefer, or comment.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Sylvia.
Hi. I was like, where's my camera? Like, what happened to my camera? Let me see if I do this.
I have two monitors too, which is why I'm looking.
Yeah, now I can live stream. I think, anyway, thank you so much for this. It's just been really informative. Like I said, I love that what CRA has done in terms of policy change.